Since we concluded yesterday, I've had two questions. One, so what was it like to be on corner gas? I could tell you the answer to that. I don't know, maybe we have a little time. Well, as I shared that with our youth at lunch, it was one of our youth delegates who asked me that question. Should I tell them the answer? Well, I'll try and brief it up. You'll know that Corner Gas was filmed at the soundstage in Regina and involved local authorship and local actors, Brent Butt being the creative genius. And in the first season of Corner Gas, he invited Pamela Wallen to do a cameo. And unfortunately, Pamela's cameo had her shoplifting a chocolate bar. And on a number of occasions, she indicated to me that was not a smart thing to do because people do not differentiate reality from what they see on a television screen. And she was asked how about the morality of taking things that didn't belong to her. In any event, I was having lunch with one Brent Butt, and he actually does eat those chili dogs for which he's infamous on the show. And I said, well, so Brent, how does it work? You know, it was our government that built the soundstage, and you give a cameo to Pamela Wallen, for goodness sakes, Commissioner of New York. So how about your old premier here? He said, fine, sure. If you want to do one, I'll write you in. So here's what he did, friends. Here's what he did. I get the script 2 days before we're to film the thing. And he has come up with this idea of involving not only myself, but Shirley Douglas in the same cameo appearance, Shirley Douglas being Tommy Douglas's daughter. He thought it would be a great, quote, NDP moment, he said. Well, okay, Brent, you're the creative genius. He sent the script over, and here was the script. Shirley Douglas is purported to have grown up in Dog River. She then moves back to Dog River, and Oscar has a certain attraction to Shirley Douglas. And so Oscar is regularly going over to Shirley's house to actually repair plumbing or to pretend to repair plumbing. And Emma thinks about enough of this. So Emma goes over to Shirley's house to see what is going on. And sure enough, Shirley Douglas does have a boyfriend. In the script, it's described as an older man. And the older man, of course, is me. And in the script, I am to be, get this, friends? I am to be stepping out of the shower. Well, I took this home, showed my wife Betty. I says, now, what do you think of that? You're not doing it. She said, you're not. Remember that rule about reality and television? So I phoned Brent. I said, look, I don't do shower scenes. Can you fix this thing? He said, okay, I understand. I'll fix it. So within 8 hours, I get the new script. Now, Brent Butt has me in bed with Shirley Douglas. I phoned him back. I said, Brent, you don't understand. I cannot be sleeping around with the patron saint's daughter. And never mind, I'm married. So we canceled that whole plan, and he wrote me another script that was entirely befitting of my status in the community. And it's one of the smarter things I ever did. Only just several weeks ago, I meet two young women. I bet the young girls, I think they may be 11, 12 years old, are standing beside me in a convenience store, and they're looking at me. And they said, you were on Corner Gas. They don't know anything about premiers or principals. They know about Corner Gas. That's the Corner Gas. Now, the other question that I have received since yesterday, and I received it once last evening over at the great coffee house that Yayak put on for us, and twice in the court. This question. It is the question, by the way, that I still get more than any other single question. And the question to me was, Calvert, why did you ever give up the pulpit for politics? Now, I have, I think, a solid theological answer to that question. The problem is when I share that answer, people's eyes just kind of glaze over. And it was one Mrs. K. Owens at Zion United Church in Moose Jaw who shared with me a little Wizard of Id cartoon that answers the question. A little Wizard of Id cartoon. You might remember that little Wizard of Id. And in that particular cartoon, the very question was asked. Why would you give up a pulpit for politics? And the Wizard of Id answers, when you've committed your life to the fighting of sin, then you might as well go where the action is. Now, I always get a good laugh with that, but in fact, I believe it to be true. If, as I do, the definition of sin is broken relationship with God, if the definition of sin is a broken relationship between I and the Spirit beside me, if a broken relationship between my neighbor or my nation, it is sin. And if we who are committed to the fighting of sin don't go where that action is, there's something wrong with us. Amen, sister. So yesterday we talked a little about roots, our roots, good roots. In doing that, the look tends to be inward. The look tends to be down into that soil, into that foundation. Today, it's wings. It forces us to look outward and upward. So today my questions are these. What is it that will make flight easier for God's people? What is it that will give our conference and our congregations and pastoral charges, what is it that will give us the wings to fly into a new century of this United Church of ours? And what will sustain our flight together? I'm going to invite Tannis and Lindsay and anyone else who wants to do a little percussion on the table to take us into the theme.
Let's lift our voices in song and feel the Spirit amongst us as we sing, or song must rise. And if you are able and could rise with the song, it's most fitting. For the Spirit to descend from the mountains to the valleys, from the desert to the sea, a song must rise once again. From the voices of our leaders, the voice of you and me, a song must rise for the Spirit to descend. Oh, a song must rise for the Spirit to descend. Oh, a song must rise once again, singing up God's praises and glory. The faithful voices blend. Oh, a song must rise for the Spirit to descend. From poverty and riches, from the voice of young and old, a song must rise once again. From the free and the imprisoned, the timid and the bold, a song must rise for the Spirit to descend. Oh, a song must rise for the Spirit to descend. Oh, a song must rise once again, singing out God's praises and glory. The faithful voices blend. Oh, a song must rise for the Spirit to descend. From every house of worship, in every faith and tongue, a song must rise once again. From the villages and cities, a new song must be sung. A song must rise for the Spirit to descend. Oh, a song must rise for the Spirit to descend. Oh, a song must rise once again, singing out God's praises and glory. The faithful voices blend. Oh, a song must rise for the Spirit to descend. Thank you. I'm so used to choir directing. It's just in me. Thank you.
Some years ago when I was living and working in Regina, we had an official delegation visit the province from the Netherlands. One of those visitors was anxious to see a little more of the province of Saskatchewan than you can from Wascana Park in Regina. And so without a great deal of time, we actually brought her out to the Qu'Appelle Valley. It was an autumn day, it was a beautiful day in the valley, and we spent some time with her in the Qu'Appelle. And that evening over a banquet, she observed to us the following: that the difference between her country and our country was that in our country, all of the hills go down. Now, if you haven't heard me tell the story I'm about to tell, then it's almost certain that I haven't been in your church in the last 4 years. I was on the edge of that same Qu'Appelle Valley 25 years ago in the autumn with our son, Dave, who was 8 years old at that time. And as we stood on the edge of that valley, we saw above us a photo that might soon appear, or a picture that might soon appear on the screen. A flock of migrating geese. A flock of migrating geese that were almost in that perfect V formation that Betty happened to catch in that picture. And our son Dave, 8 years old, says to me, "So how do they pick the leader of the flock? How do they pick the bird that gets to fly at the front of the flock? How do they pick their leader?" And I had, of course, no idea. Well, maybe it's the oldest bird, I don't know. Maybe it's the bird that went to college. Maybe it's the bird with the most hours of flight, I don't know. And I tell you what, if the geese were human, I know something about this. You sell memberships. You have a convention. You, by the way, you get Elder Lorne standing ready, helping you. Geese are not human, and perhaps in this regard they're the wiser. It's my friend Lorne Scott, good friend of this conference, working as the chair of the Indian Head Pastoral Charge right now. It was my good friend Lorne Scott, the naturalist, who explained to me that in that migrating flock of geese, it is not just a single bird who assumes the role of leadership. In fact, any in that flock may be called upon to lead. And in the vast migration, the leadership is constantly changing. And it's for the very simple aerodynamic principle that that bird at the front of the flock, that bird at the front of the V, is cutting through the wind, is cutting through the air, is creating the beginnings of a little slipstream into which the other birds can follow. In principle, that bird in the lead is making flight easier for the whole flock. And when the lead bird tires, it will fall back, and another will take its place. And hence they are able to traverse the distances they do as a flock. Now, if this is the case, then the principle in the migrating geese is that leadership of the flock is service to the flock. Leadership is to make flight easier for the wings of others. And if that is true, then I believe there is gospel in those migrating flocks of geese. You might well remember Luke chapter 21. It is that chapter in which Luke records the events of the Last Supper. They have come together out of fear of the authorities in this hidden upper room. Everybody in the room knows that this is very likely to be their last opportunity to be together in this little flock they have traveled with. They share the bread. They share the wine. And then what does Luke report happens at the Last Supper? Do you remember what happens at the Last Supper? I'll just read it to you. Luke reports an argument broke out among the disciples as to which one of them should now be thought of as the greatest. They got into a fight at the Last Supper over what? Over who should now be considered the greatest. Or, more to the point, if this leader is gone, who now will be the leader of the flock? Who among us will be the greatest? They break out into an argument at the Last Supper. You know, it's so typically human. I know about this too. It is perceived that a leader is leaving. The fight is on. The fight was on at the Last Supper. I can almost hear the frustration in Jesus' voice. Jesus said to them, listen, the kings of the pagans have power over their people. And rulers, get this, rulers claim the title, oh, friends of the people. But this is not the way it is with you. Rather, with you, the greatest one among you must be like the youngest, and the leader must be like the servant. And he says to them, so who's the greatest? Who do you think's the greatest? The one who sits on the platform? The one who sits at the head table? The one who gets served? Or is it the one who serves? Well, he said, I am among you as one who serves. The principle of leadership in the Christian family is the principle of leadership, of service. To be a leader among God's people is to be a servant of the servants of God. So the test of our leadership as a United Church of Canada, the test of our leadership as lay leaders, the test of our leadership as ordered ministry is just this. Are we making flight easier for others? For to lead is to serve. Now, with that, I have two propositions to share with you before a little table group chat. After 10 years in pastoral ministry and the great pastoral charges of Gravelburg, Zion, and Moose Jaw, after 24 years in politics, government, and public life, and now after almost 5 years at St. Andrew's College, I am absolutely convinced that God's world needs leaders. I am absolutely convinced of our United Church beginning campaign that declares God's world needs leaders. God's world needs servant leaders who will give flight to our labors and our dreams. And I'm going to be even more specific. God's World, Saskatchewan Conference, the United Church of Canada, our congregations and our pastoral charges need servant leaders. We need a new generation of servant leaders in ordered ministry in this church. Now look, I once took a degree in economics. You don't need a degree in economics to figure this out. Have you read your docket? Have you read Chinook Presbytery's report? 19 congregations, 3 ministers. Have you read the Pastoral Relations report that's come around? I scanned it last night. In this conference alone, we are retiring 8 people from ordered ministry. We have 6 part-time vacancies. We have 11 full-time vacancies. 11 plus 6 plus 8 equals 25. Tomorrow, we are ordaining 1. Designating no one, commissioning no one, ordaining Kathleen. Now, I tell you, Kathleen is good. She's very good. But 25, she is not. But even more, my friends, God's world and our church needs servant leaders who can lift wings and work in our community and in our society. And we need these servant leaders to be well equipped. We need them to be deeply rooted in Scripture and theology, deeply rooted in history and the ethos of our church. They must be equipped with the demanding competencies of ministry today and be called to service in our communities. Now, I get people all the time. In fact, I was at Manitoba Conference, and I had a guy stand up right on the floor of the conference and say this to me. I get people saying to me this all the time. Well, how can we be encouraging people to ministry and to servant leadership in our church when we are in such a time of decline, or in such a time of uncertainty, or in such a time of consolidation and transition and change? How can we even think about encouraging people to ministry? And I tell you, friends, I say to them, how can we not be encouraging people to leadership? It is precisely in the hour of uncertainty and change and transition that servant leadership matters the very most. When things are going swimmingly, you might get away without it. It's in the time of challenge and change that you must seek out your servant leaders. Look, when your community is standing on the shore of the Red Sea, and you've got mountains on this side and mountains on that side, and you've got Pharaoh and the chariots behind you, and all that's in front of you is a bunch of mud and water, it's that moment that you need your Miriam to sing and your Moses to lead.